How do these 3 tools lead to a perfectly quilted spiral? Come along and I'll show you. Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Well, the other day I was at the gym on my elliptical machine, and any of you that have watched this channel or read my blog know the next words out of my mouth are going to be, and I was watching a quilting video, because you see, that's how I get through my daily torture, is by watching quilting videos. This was a video from Miriam at Stitch Obsessed, and I will leave a link to her video in the description box. But what she was talking about was wanting to quilt spirals on a quilt. You know, where you come from here and you just continually get bigger and bigger and bigger as you go. And she was talking about how hard they were to mark. Well, then she brought in her dad, who had this wonderful idea I want to show you. You need 3 things. You need a dowel. In my case, I'm using a 1/2-inch dowel. You need a length of twine or string, something that will not stretch. And you need a fabric marking pen. Now you attach the 3 together, just with tape. Here's how I've done it. You set the dowel end on the quilt top, and then you mark around and around and around, and you see we're getting closer and closer in as we go till you get into there. That is the easiest way to get that spiral marking on a quilt. Well, I actually videoed while I did it, so let's go have a look at that and see how it works. I'm going to start with this being the center of my first circle. So it's going to come slightly off of the quilt, but that's all right. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm going to start with it like this, and I'm going to start taking this and drawing. Coming here. The other question is, oh good, the blue is showing enough that I'll be able to see it. So I'm just going around. Okay, I'm going to miss a little bit there. That's all right. Oh, actually, yeah, it's going to come off of it just a little bit there. And then back down. It is nicely curling around the stick as I go. You can see there's about a 2-inch to maybe 2.5-inch gap between these lines. I think that's going to look great for the quilting. I did have a big concern as to whether this blue line was actually going to show up on the darker fabrics, and it does, so I'm very happy with that. Let's keep coming around. That's very satisfying, actually, just to have that circle get smaller and smaller. And the nice thing is, if I feel like it needs more quilting, I can always come in and quilt halfway in, you know, quilt around it a second time. But I really don't think, especially for a charity quilt, I think this is going to be plenty of quilting. Okay, I like that. I think that looks good. So now I'm going to move it over and do another circle here. I want this circle to intersect with this one. So where this one's coming around here, I want something coming this direction. Let's say we're going to start with that right in the middle of that blue one right there. And let's just, that's going to intersect, that's going to come right on top of that line. I don't really want that. So let's move it over one to the brown, and that will keep it from intersecting right where I can't, or where another line is. So let's just start again. So I guess I should keep going the same direction I was going. That would be easier for me. I did learn to, in my practicing, to tape the, need to move this over some, to tape the pen down very well, because the first time I did it, the pen came off about halfway through in my practices. So you see how easy that was to mark? Now I'm all ready to take it to the machine and do the quilting, and we'll do that in just a minute. But there are a couple of other comments I want to make here. First of all, if you want those lines to be closer together, mine are fairly, about 2 inches apart because I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time quilting this quilt. But what if you want them to be closer? There's a couple of things you can do. You can use a smaller dowel. You could go down to a 1/4 inch dowel, and that's going to put those marks closer together. You can also use a finer twine. In my case, I wasn't worried about the keeping everything exactly even and that sort of thing. So if you used a finer string of some sort, again, something that doesn't stretch, if you use something finer, that's going to make those loops closer together, and it's also going to make them a little more accurate than what I have here. But I'm still happy with what I've got. All right, we're all marked, and now we're ready to quilt. I debated long and hard about how to quilt this. I thought about using my sit-down long arm because I knew that I could do it on that and it would be fairly easy to do. But since it wasn't a huge quilt, I thought, why don't we use a walking foot and do it on a domestic machine? So that's what I ended up doing. Now let me tell you a little bit about this video before we start. I start out quilting on one particular spiral, and then about a minute into it, I switched to a different spiral to finish it out. That was just some recording issues that I had. Don't we love when that happens? But this will give you an idea of what it looks like to quilt one of these spirals. I've now stitched a couple of these circles, and what I'm finding is that I love using the walking foot as it gets bigger. I really don't like it in this first little circle around here, but if I'll just take my time, stitch a few 10 stitches, and then move my foot a little bit, I can achieve a smooth curve. And as long as I do that for just this little bit right in here, then I'm home free for the rest of the quilt. So I'm just going to stitch 2 or 3 stitches, and then stop and turn it, and stitch 2 or 3, stop and turn just a little bit. The trick here, I think, is to not turn it too much, but just turn it a little bit, because that way you don't end up with a point there. If you turn too much, you end up with a point. And you can see it's already even after just doing a little bit of it. It's getting easier. And there is a lot of stuffing to get all of this bulk underneath the machine. And like I said, if this had been a big quilt, I don't think I would have been able to have done it with my walking foot. Or I wouldn't have been able to do it easily. I could have done it, I think, but it would not have been nearly as easy. Okay, I'm starting to come out of that tight curve. Push that through one more time. So now I'm coming out of that tight curve, and you can see that I'm just, being able to stitch for longer and longer and longer. Let's have a look at it. Let me get around to it so you can see it on camera. And let's have a look at it. Let me go just a little bit further. That circle in there does not look bad at all. The first one that I did had a lot more lumps and bumps on it, but I'm happy with that one. Definitely getting easier as I go. All right, I've reached this edge. I can see that this line continues back over here. So I'm just going to stitch in this ditch right here until I get to that circle, and then I can finish it. I love using a walking foot to stitch in the ditch. And even though I'm using a walking foot, I still have my hands on either side of the needle, just like I do when I'm doing free motion quilting. little bit further to right there. Okay, let's keep going in the circles. So now we have this interior part quilted. I love how it looks. I love how some of these spirals are just kind of standalone, but then others interact in different ways in these corners. I think it looks great and is a wonderful experiment that worked out beautifully. Don't we love when that happens? So be sure to come back on Friday because we're going to quilt this border. I had a lot of fun using a ruler and quilting along on it, and I can't wait to show you how that turned out. Well, we learned something new today, how to mark and quilt spirals, and boy was it fun. Thanks so much for joining me, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.